the circumstances that led to Nolan Xavier Wells entering the water. Last time we saw him on the videos, he was without a shirt. Somebody saw something. Somebody knows something. Why is Nolan Wells dead?
That question has hung in the air since July 4th, since 18-year-old college football player Nolan Wells vanished from a remote island only to be found days later under circumstances that still don't add up. The independent autopsy results for Nolan Wells are now in, and what they found, I'm going to break it all down with you, with an expert who can tell us what this all really means. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. So look, we have all been waiting for answers in this case. The family has been waiting for answers in this case, waiting for something, anything that could tell us what really happened to Nolan Wells on that island. His family has been waiting patiently. The public has been watching. And today, finally, we got something. The independent autopsy results are in. Remember, the family had commissioned that an independent autopsy be conducted. There seems to be this level of perhaps distrust in the investigation from the state ME. We know that they're being represented by attorney Ben Crump, and Ben Crump just stepped up to the mic this morning to tell us what they found. Now, briefly, a lot has happened, okay? A lot's been going on, but most importantly, to give you an update here, Nolan Wells' life was honored this week. There was a massive service. There was hundreds of people. Reverend Al Sharpton delivered the eulogy. Tyler Perry covered the costs. And before that service ended, Sharpton made a move that got everyone's attention. A $50,000 reward for information leading to a conviction in Nolan Wells' case. Perry matched it on the spot. $100,000 now. That's the total for whoever knows something that could lead to a potential conviction here. Assuming for the moment, by the way, that a crime was committed. The FBI has stepped in. They're looking into threats that were tied to this case. Tells you how high the temperature has gotten. And all of this is happening with the possibility of a grand jury looming. Look, as far as we know, after a meeting with the DA, Ben Crump said that the DA indicated that after the sheriff's office investigation, they may present this case to a grand jury. No timeline yet, but a possibility as we're awaiting the official results of the autopsy, right? Because I want to be clear, what I'm about to get into is the results, the preliminary findings of the independent autopsy, not the state medical examination's autopsy. We've been tracking every development in this case, and today, Ben Crump made this huge announcement standing at the podium at the NAACP convention with the preliminary findings. We know that Nolan Wells' body was moved to Washington, D.C. Again, the family commissioned this. They ordered this. And these are the findings that provide our first independent look at what happened. Now, before we even got to those findings, Ben Crump laid out why this fight for transparency even exists.
I want to thank you all who have called the call center. I want to thank Reverend Al Sharpton. I want to thank Mr. Tyler Perry. I want to thank Mr. Terry Owens for putting up the $125,000 reward for anybody out there who have information so we can get to the truth of what happened. I mean, any videos, and we've gotten so many videos, President Johnson, from that day from young people, and we want them to have the courage to come forward with the pictures. What you heard, I know people said there were a lot of disturbances out there. Some believe it involved Nolan. All of those things are important to get to the truth of what happened. And so that's why I thank you all for being here, because this news is as important as any news in the United States of America, finding out why is Nolan Wells dead.
Losing a child, it truly breaks your heart. It is a pain that is just, you can't measure it. Especially someone like Nolan, who brought so much joy and light and life to everyone. You don't find too many genuine people like him. So to lose that light at such a young age under these circumstances has been absolutely difficult, which is why we've gone this route. There's so many people out in the public asking all of these questions. But the only question that we have is what happened to our son. That is the only question. And so it is our hope that our local authorities will do what they need to do, because us having the preliminary autopsy results and hearing nothing from them, it's heartbreaking and it's concerning, which again is why we are here, why we have asked for this help.
So now the family has their independent autopsy results, and here is what that medical examiner, that pathologist found.
Preliminary report, second autopsy, death of Nolan Xavier Wells. Cause of death, undetermined, pending investigation. The manner of death, undetermined, pending investigation. Focal area of red discoloration in the soft tissue of the back of the head, the occipital region. He said the etiology is unknown at this time. He said the body was received after the initial autopsy. He said the body had marked decompensation.
So what do you hear? Cause undetermined, manner undetermined, this red discoloration on the back of the head. But this is where it gets interesting. So according to Ben Crump, he claimed the United Cajun Navy found Nolan fully clothed, face down, even though Crump pointed out that the last picture we have seen of Nolan wearing the swim trunks with his friends that's been circulated everywhere, he's not fully clothed, right? He's not wearing a shirt. And you have this last video of him, or potentially of him, this newly surfaced TMZ footage recorded at 2:23 p.m. on July 4th, which appears to show a man arguably matching Nolan's description on a boat wearing the same blue swim trunks that he had in that famous photo. Again, shirtless, if that is him. However, this just came out. So the United Cajun Navy took to X and they said, Attorney Crump, we didn't say Nolan was fully clothed when found. He was wearing only swim trunks. Please don't misrepresent our words. Now, this is another issue to try to make sense of what the condition of Nolan's body was. Okay, so I want to make sense of this. I want to try to understand what all of this means. I'm bringing on one of our favorites in this space. This is Dr. Naida Rutherford, Richland County Coroner. So good to see you, Doctor. I knew you were watching this live. We were watching it live. I know you were taking a lot of notes as we were trying to make sense of this. There's a lot of different areas here to go into. I guess I'll just start with the big conclusion from this independent autopsy, and you tell me how limited independent autopsies are. But the fact that it came out that the cause and manner of death are undetermined pending investigation, is that something that surprises you? Or and what do we mean by this? What do we take away from this?
Number one, given the circumstances surrounding this case, I am extremely disappointed that an independent autopsy was not performed from the beginning. Yes, the state has a responsibility to perform the autopsy, but even the county coroner said, I want no parts of it. I'm sending this to the state ME's office. So if they were going to do that, they should have given this family the option from the beginning to have an independent autopsy, because things are missing from this independent autopsy that as a mother, as a community member, don't sit right with me. Number one, if you are going to hold back any parts of the body, I feel as if the independent examiner should have known that from the beginning, and a report of what those findings were should have been sent to him. Yes, it is customary to hold back pieces of the body if you're going to examine them further, but why? What was there that you needed to examine? And why have you not discussed this with the family? Transparency as a public official, especially in the role of coroner, where you are expected to perform an independent autopsy outside of the police's investigation, I feel that the coroner and ME's office has not been transparent and upfront with this family, and that is very concerning to me. Why would you hold back the neck muscles? Why would you hold back?
Let me play that. Let me play that portion of the press conference right now.
The anterior inner neck structures were absent, not received with the body. the trachea and the laryngeal cartilage, the thyroid horn, and the hyoid bone were not received with the body. Therefore, this pathologist cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributor or a cause of death.
Dr. Rutherford, why would those pieces be removed? And are they being tested? You make a really good point about why that wasn't communicated to Dr. Mitchell, right, the person who was conducting this independent autopsy. But why would those pieces of a body be typically, or I don't know, is it typical to remove them, and for what purpose?
Yes, it is typical to remove them. Whenever an autopsy is performed, we are removing those internal structures so that we can further examine them, not only from a visual standpoint, but from a microscopic standpoint as well. Now, when we look at the neck muscles, we look at what's called the strap muscles. So if you kind of, just to give you kind of an idea, these are your strap muscles, okay? But right here sits your esophagus, sits your trachea, sits your hyoid bone. They specifically mentioned that the hyoid bone was not included in the body when the independent examiner received it. That's a significant point for me because that means that they are checking to see if the strap muscles had hemorrhaging, meaning signs of strangulation. Petechial hemorrhaging is very important, but also bleeding into those muscles. The hyoid bone, examining that bone, being able to remove the soft tissue from it to check for signs of trauma, like a fracture to that bone, is crucial when you're thinking about possible strangulation or someone being choked, hit in the neck area, blunt force trauma. The other thing that's significant for me with this is that they could not determine whether or not intracranial hemorrhage occurred, which again is problematic because there was discoloration to the back of the skull. They noted it. They measured it.
I was going to ask you about that.
Why was that not disclosed? And if there was no underlying fracture, fine, but why not say that? This family should know more than what they know. Even when we get cases like this and we have questions, we still tell the families what little we know and tell them, hey, things could change,
Right.
but here's what we have right now.
So a lot of questions about this. Number one, the fact that those, I hate to say it, those pieces of Nolan's body are missing. Does that mean you can't even determine whether this was an accidental drowning?
Exactly, because I need to know when they received that body at that first examination, was there water in the airway? Was there debris in the airway? What were the contents of his stomach? Were there pills there? Was there alcohol there? Was there food there? That gives me a timeline on when Nolan may have last eaten. What was he drinking? I'm examining the contents of his stomach. How was his body found? Was he found actually in a body of water, truly inside of the water, or was he just on the shoreline? All of these things matter greatly when you are doing a water death, especially.
So if the first examiner, right, removed those body parts, does that suggest that they may have a conclusion, that when the state ME's report comes out with the toxicology findings, they may have a conclusion whether or not there was foul play, whether there was trauma to that region, whether there was drowning, that the fact that they removed those pieces would suggest they may have an answer?
They sent everything else. So obviously, they held these pieces of Nolan's body behind to further examine them. Why? And if you weren't going to send the entire body, why? And you need to tell not only the examiner that, you need to tell the family that, you need to tell the attorney that, because that is significant information. This Dr. Roger Mitchell cannot perform a full independent examination if he's missing pieces of the body. Did you do a full skeletal x-ray to know whether or not those bones were broken? I really think the biggest mistake here is that they did not allow this family to go ahead and perform an independent autopsy knowing the circumstances of this case.
But people are going to look at this and say, are they hiding something? They give a body over without, is that a fair conclusion? Or is that, like, again, I want to be careful about this and say, is this something that you've seen before? Is it standard? Is it a lapse in judgment? Is it a mistake? Is it sloppy work? Or is there something that is not, there's a lack of transparency?
Here's what I think. Listening to them respond about the condition of his body and what they believed could have happened to Nolan without even getting to the examination of his body is concerning. How can you assume that there was no foul play? How can you assume that this was an accidental drowning and you have not even completed the autopsy yet? That would have been mistake number one to point out in this case, not only from a perspective of being a parent, but also just as the coroner, I meet with our law enforcement and tell them, hey, please do not release this type of information without talking to me first. Because I don't want the family to think that we're hiding anything from them. I want them to know. And Nolan deserves to have the story of his death told, no matter how harsh it may be, no matter how benign it may be. He deserves to have the truth of his death told accurately.
Sure. This red discoloration on the back of Nolan's head in this tissue area, I believe they call it the focal. You would know better than me. The focal. They call it the focal.
They called it a focal discoloration, meaning that
Yes.
it wasn't a diffuse discoloration, meaning it didn't cover a wide area. It was very specific to that area, so specific, in fact, that they could measure it to determine that it didn't spread anywhere else. So I think that's really important because that could be a point of impact.
Now, could that be from the examination, the first examination, the way the body was placed, or could that be because remember when the body was ultimately examined, right? I think it was July 10th, they say the body was examined, unless I think I'm correct about that. But could that be someone hit Nolan? Something happened to him and that mark would still be there, just assuming, or do you think it could be something that happened after he died?
I think it's probably before, especially because there seemed to be the discoloration as it was described. And again, you have someone who is a non-medical professional reading an autopsy report, which I also completely disagree with because it muddies the waters. He really should have had either Dr. Mitchell or an assistant, someone with medical training and knowledge to read this autopsy report. But I digress. The discoloration that they discussed, just want to make sure I'm quoting them correctly in what they stated, said it was a 12 by 8 inch red discoloration overlaying the occipital bone. So I think that's significant because this shows a blow from behind. No matter whether or not it caused intracranial hemorrhage or not, we know that there was no underlying skull fracture associated with it. So the fact that this happened to him, we know that this was a ante-mortem thing, that this happened before he died, because you don't really bruise after you die. We check for those bruises. We actually have the pathologist cut into those bruises and they look for certain things. Now, again, this body was found later. It was found in an outdoor area, but we don't know if that body had been there the entire time or did somebody bring it back and drop it off. They say he was fully clothed, but in all the pictures, he doesn't have a shirt on. There's so many questions.
What did you make of that? What about the marked decomposition of the body?
Again, very significant. It's so significant because I want to know what decompositional changes there were. Was he bloated? Was he waterlogged? They say he wasn't waterlogged, but again, if you're found face down near a body of water, wet things break down faster. I can't imagine that the shoreline is just dry. There's water there. There's moisture there. So is his face intact? Were there bugs on him? There should have been some examination, even with the forensic entomologist, to say, was bug activity present here? You can look at the bugs to help determine a timeline for the time of death. I feel like so much is missing here. And I think the biggest mistake, Jesse, seriously, is that they should have given this family the option to perform an autopsy on their own before someone else touched the body.
I want to play something else from Ben Crump this morning. Let's take a look.
This pathologist cannot rule out if any intervening non-accidental factors contributed to or caused the death of Nolan Wells. Understand, he's saying based on the examination of the body, he cannot rule out foul play. That is significant. With the following questions still outstanding, number one, What were the circumstances that led to Nolan Xavier Wells entering the water? Number 2, what was the body position when it was found? Number 3, was there water in the airway? Remember, he talked about the lungs and the airways. Were they filled with water? Number 4, is there any evidence of injuries to the anterior neck structure? We got the autopsy without his neck. We got the body without his neck at the time of the second autopsy. Number 5, is there any evidence of any intracranial hemorrhaging? He said that is going to be very significant, things that he could not observe at autopsy that the initial medical examiner would have been able to observe. Number 6, was the composition of what was the composition of the stomach contents? He talks about that being important because when was he found? How long had he been in the water? How long had it been since his last meal? All those things become relevant factors when you're trying to do a thorough and impartial autopsy. And number 7, what are the toxicology report findings? He said the best classification again for the cause and manner of death for Nolan Xavier Wells is undetermined pending investigation.
So they can't rule out foul play. How do the state investigators now respond to this? I'm imagining they're still waiting for toxicology results for their own autopsy, but do they respond to this? How do they respond to this? When do we receive the official autopsy from the state medical examiner's office? What's going to happen next there? I mean, I'm really curious about the law enforcement's response to this.
I think their option is to respond. I think it's the only right thing to do. The fact that they have chosen not to respond, the fact that they've chosen not to be transparent and to share information, it's not just a failure of duty, but it's a betrayal of public trust. The public trusts you to tell the story about how people died, whatever that truth may be. And if they have something, they need to talk with the family. They don't need to have a press conference about it. They don't need to talk to anyone else but that family. And tell the family, hey, I want to share this with you, but I need you guys to not share this until we get all of the reports back. That's a very simple ask. This mother and father want to know what happened to their son. That's the least that they could do is respond and say, this is why we're saying there's no foul play. This is how we've concluded this.
And I'm curious, look, if there really is a divergence between what that medical examination is and what is here, I mean, it's already going to raise a lot of questions. This presser is going to raise a lot of questions. The toxicology findings, how much is that going to help fill in the blanks?
I don't know that it will. If there's nothing there, then it's non-contributory to the cause of death. But what if there is something there? This is a student athlete. This is someone who prided himself on his athletic ability and staying healthy to play football. This was a first love for him. You hear his dad speak so passionately about his son's football career and what he was trying to do. So I can't imagine that this is a kid who's just out here, doing drugs and drinking. And if someone saw him doing those things, then step forward, say something. Because we know as parents that our children don't tell us everything that they do. He's a college kid. Maybe he does do something every now and again, but someone needs to say something. Someone needs to.
I think even, as we talked about, having that video come out that could potentially be Nolan, that's a piece of the puzzle, right? More video coming out, establish a timeline. There's something to this idea about so many people being there, and you don't know who spoke to who yet and what those interviews were like. But again, you have to imagine somebody might have more information, because right now, based on this independent autopsy, and we'll see what happens with the official autopsy, that can only tell so much. So Dr. Naida Rutherford, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. See you next time, everybody.